Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBingeIT. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're on Season 3, Episode 7, Sacred Ground. This episode aired October 30th, 1996. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, which was Remember?
That is one of my favorite and most heartfelt episodes of Voyager. So good.
Yeah, you were quite moved.
Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it.
I thought it was good.
Poor Karena. She didn't deserve any of that.
She did not, but she let herself get swept up in it. I think it would be really hard to not get swept up if your whole family is in it. I'm sure a lot of people are going through stuff like that now.
Yes.
And it's just, if you have no community to reach out to, whereas now everybody's on the internet and can find their community, but it wasn't always that way.
Yes.
And also, it means that the crazies can also connect on the internet. So it has its downsides.
There are downsides like that, yes. And there's some very bad examples of it.
Yeah.
But this is where Star Trek should point to a more positive future and how people should behave.
Should.
Being the
Yes.
operative word, yes.
All right, let's get started. I have the notes this week. In the cold open, Janeway is recording a log saying they've accepted an invitation by the Nakani to take a few days shore leave on their planet. We jump right down to the planet, but we won't see anything of the planet because we're going to spend the entire time in a familiar-looking cave.
Yes. Do you think they were just sharing sets with Deep Space Nine at this point?
Yeah, of course. Some of the crew members are getting a tour of the caves, and they learn that it's a sanctuary honoring their ancestral spirits.
Yes.
They bump into some monks who the tour guide says have devoted their lives to serving the spirits. Kes and Neelix are bringing up the rear in the group, and they're just touching things. I don't think they should be touching things.
Yeah, they need to have little signs that say, do not touch. Those signs are aimed at Neelix.
Yeah, you should just know better. He just walks right up to something and touches it. I'm like, you're in a spiritual place. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Kes hears some noises in the distance, and they veer off into another room, away from the group, another thing you shouldn't be doing. And they find a bright light coming from an opening in the cave. I don't know, it looks like an opening to another area, but you can't see beyond it because of the bright light.
Yeah.
Neelix comments that it looks like a shrine, and he encourages Kes to return to the group so they don't fall behind, but she just wants to take a quick look, which I can tell you from watching years of Star Trek is a terrible idea.
Dreadful.
She walks up to the mouth of the opening and is immediately zapped with some kind of energy blast and falls to the ground. Neelix shouts for help, and we go into the opening credits.
Well, I guess you can't really blame her. I mean, she is only, 4 years old now? She's more than halfway through her life.
Yeah, and this is not an uncommon thing in Star Trek, and we, of course, as the viewers, we know that we're about to be punished for this transgression.
Oh, yeah. And races like this, they never put up signs saying, do not enter. Danger.
Well, it's like, I get it if this is just a sacred place, people know not to touch things, but if you're going to bring people in there, then, you need little velvet ropes. You got to keep people away from stuff.
Yep.
You need wax fruit instead of the real stuff so that they go and touch the fake things. Yeah, this is a big mistake.
Right. You mean, you could have put up a basic sign, exactly.
Yeah. After the theme song, B'Elanna, Harry, and the tour guide come running, with the tour guide saying, this is a sacred place and we shouldn't be in here. Again, why was there no rope?
Yeah.
Neelix says, but she didn't touch anything, which is true. She didn't touch anything in this room, but she did go into an area off the tour, and they did touch things in the other room. B'Elanna calls Voyager to beam Neelix and Kes up, and then they start arguing with their tour guide, who we later learn is the magistrate.
Yeah.
Which is easier to say than tour guide. B'Elanna and Harry want to get equipment in the cave and start scanning to figure out what happened, but the magistrate says that's not possible. He says there's nothing to be done. She's been punished by the spirits, and she's going to die. Harry and B'Elanna argue with the guy pointlessly, and he tells them they should leave. The magistrate is played by an actor named Harry Groner, who was in Next Gen and Enterprise as different characters.
Yes, I saw that. He had a 4 count for the number of episodes he appeared in.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because the thing he's most memorable, or most recognizable, at least for me, is as the evil mayor in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
Which Armin Shimmerman was also in.
Yeah.
As the not evil, but unpleasant principal. But this guy was evil.
Yeah.
We have him to thank and to blame for Faith. Now we go up to sickbay. The doctor tells the captain that Kes has undergone severe neuroleptic shock. Her life signs are weak but stable. Neelix is desperate, of course, but the doctor says he isn't really able to help her until he knows more about what's happened. Janeway says they're trying to learn what they can from orbit because they won't let them come into the cave and take scans.
Can't they sneakily, beam down and just take some readings and come back?
I would think so.
Yeah. I mean, and this is important.
And you don't have to go right into the cave. They talk about how what's difficult from orbit is scanning through all the solid rock.
Yeah.
But if you're near the cave, just don't go into the sacred part.
Yeah.
But nope, not going to happen.
Too many roadblocks.
Janeway says she's on her way to talk to the magistrate to see if she can get some help from him in some way, but I think he was pretty clear that he can't help.
Yeah.
Neelix is desperate to do something, so she tells him to go down to the planet and start doing research. There must be some kind of scientific data on this energy field. Janeway is now talking to the magistrate, but he's no help, saying he doesn't know why the spirits do what they do, and the monks aren't really interested in helping, although they do send their sympathies. So, thoughts and prayers.
Exactly. Thoughts and prayers.
He explains there's a long-standing agreement between the government and the monks that they don't interfere with each other, which is a good idea, but, rarely works. The only thing he does know is the shrine in question is where the monks go to receive a gift of purification, a cleansing of the soul, and it's one of their most holy places. Apparently, the monks prepare themselves with a secret ritual, during which they speak directly with the ancestral spirits, which this is a detail that I think Janeway missed in the story.
Yeah.
That the ritual is that they speak directly.
Right.
And then they're able to enter the shrine unharmed. This, of course, is now all that Janeway cares about. She's like, what is this ritual? How does it protect them? And she immediately wants to understand the science behind it.
Oh, yeah.
But the magistrate is like, I don't know.
It makes total sense that Janeway that would be where she would immediately go. I need to understand the science of it. There's a rational, logical explanation for how all of this works.
Well, I think when it's not your religion, you would, most of us would do that. They'd be like, okay, so what do they do in this ritual? It must be something I can just do. Black and white.
But the other option is that the preparation is the monks to actually just turn off this field that they're generating and then actually just walk through it. Yeah. And there's actually a party room in the back. So this is the way of keeping out the non-believers from their entertainment time.
It's a VIP room.
Yes,
that's what
there you go. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the magistrate genuinely seems to feel bad, but he says there's just nothing to be done. In sickbay, we don't have any useful information from our scans. Janeway tells the doctor about the monks being able to pass through the energy fields unharmed, and the doctor finds this intriguing because he's running out of ideas of how to help Kes. Neelix has arrived, and while he found no scientific info, there was one very old story about a young prince who recovered from the same condition that Kes has. He accidentally wandered into the shrine, went into a death sleep. His father, the king, did not accept that it was the will of the spirits for his son to die, so he went through the ritual himself to seek an audience with the spirits and pleaded for his son's life. The spirits granted his request. And so now Janeway is ready to get in there.
And most importantly, once again, we see it's the rich getting special treatment.
Yeah, of course.
It was a prince and a king. Had it been one of the common people, they're dead.
It's always the 1%ers. Janeway meets up again with the magistrate, who is familiar with this old story, but he says the king was able to take responsibility for the prince as a father and as a king, and Janeway points out that she's in a similar position. She's responsible for everyone in her crew, and the magistrate, he kind of smiles, like he's impressed that she came up with this, and he agrees. She tells him she volunteers to go through the ritual for Kes.
I feel like the magistrate maybe could have brought this story up earlier when he was like, oh, I know about that story. Mm-hmm. You could have told Janeway about it.
Yeah, but I imagine if it's only one time in 1,000 years that anybody did that, then it might have slipped your mind. It's not something they talk about all the time.
Oh, okay. You have an unguarded shrine that people seem to wander into willy-nilly.
You'd think it would happen more often, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I wonder if it was just sort of a children's story.
Oh.
Maybe people didn't really think it happened.
Oh, I get you. Yeah. Okay, that would be a more reasonable thing of that's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
That's something we tell our children so they make sure the monks are well paid.
It's like the planet with the cave and the monster in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a great episode.
Now we go to something new in season 3, Chakotay's office. Has the first officer ever had an office? I mean, when she said something about, send the comm into Chakotay's office, I'm like, Chakotay has an office? I do like that behind him, it just looks like list of names of the crew on the screens behind him, because I guess he's supposed to be responsible for the crew. And so it's just like org charts and budgets everywhere. It's just like my job. It's the same thing.
Well, isn't this like Deep Space Nine? Remember where they all of a sudden the party room or the wardroom suddenly came out of nowhere, and you were like, where did this come from?
Yeah, there was no wardroom until they got like, I don't know, season 2 or season 3 or something. It was definitely not in season 1. Well, anyway, Janeway is telling Chakotay about volunteering to go through this ritual, and Chakotay is skeptical, wondering why she'd volunteer to participate in a religious ceremony when she doesn't believe in the religion. She, of course, figures that she'll find a scientific explanation for this whole thing, because that's her plan.
Makes perfect sense.
She's been reviewing the Federation's cultural database, and most traditional spiritual quest ceremonies involve some kind of physical challenge or test of endurance to test the master of spirit over body. Even though she has no evidence, she assumes this ritual is going to be the same. A series of ordeals that will result in a biochemical change that everybody will call spiritual, but she knows it's scientific.
Yep.
Chakotay says there's always the possibility that the spirits really do control the shrine. She's not convinced, but it makes sense that he might entertain that possibility, considering his own recent experience.
Well, yes, and this is the guy who had a vision of his father who told him completely wrong information. So, yeah, he's definitely somebody you want to listen to.
Yeah. But also, he met the Sky People, or whatever they were called, in Tattoo, and he found out that a lot of the stories he had heard were actually true.
Oh, that is right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But did he find there was a spiritual element, or did he just find these guys were aliens?
Well, that's kind of the point with that one. If it was an alien manipulating a lesser evolved race for their own benefit. And if you remember, genetically modifying them.
I remember.
So it really wasn't spiritual. It was like some advanced race playing at God.
Well, he did have visions, though, but perhaps he had those visions because of how they manipulated the DNA of his ancestors.
Yeah.
So they could communicate or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They put that in their DNA.
But by this point, we should know about the prophets in Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
But, we're probably also just thinking, no, though, those are just the wormhole aliens. Because they don't know everything yet.
They kind of were.
Yeah, I guess so. But they had powers of time, and they could do things without interacting directly, which gave them a sort of, a spiritual aura at any rate.
A sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
The magistrate calls to say the spiritual council has eagerly approved her request, and they consider it an honor that she wants to seek out the spirits. This, of course, is not exactly what she's doing, but they're into it, so okay.
They're on board. We're good.
Yeah, he says the ritual begins at sunset, and a guide will meet her at the entrance to the sanctuary. Now we're prepping for the ceremony, and the doctor explains that a subdermal bioprobe will transmit any changes to Janeway's biochemistry. She's also got a homing beacon and the ability to beam out immediately. I do think in this scene, they're all kind of losing sight of what we're doing here. It's like, you're going into a religious ritual on an alien planet. Like, we should have asked in advance about all these things. Is it okay if we do all this stuff?
Right. It does seem a little disrespectful.
Disrespectful,
of their faith. Mm-hmm. If you're doing all of these things, especially when they're taking you in good faith of allowing you to do this.
Right. Because like what the magistrate said, they're happy she's trying to seek the spirits.
Right.
She knows that's not what she's doing.
Yeah.
The king in the old story was trying to seek an audience with the spirits.
Yes.
He wasn't looking for scientific evidence of how to get out of there, right, or how to get out of that problem. She's doing something completely different. And even if her attitude and idea of what she was doing didn't align with, the sort of spiritual part of it, you can't just go in there with a bunch of technology without warning. That is very disrespectful.
I think, and from a Starfleet or Federation standpoint, I think you should be willing to respect their faith or traditions. I think this is pushing over the line. This, I would say, is almost indistinguishable for we covertly go in, beam in, take the readings, leave. What's the difference?
Yeah.
You're not if you're like going in with the right attitude.
Yeah, I agree. And that is a complaint I have throughout this whole episode.
Yeah.
Now we're down in the entrance to the sanctuary, and Janeway is impatiently awaiting her guide. There's a woman in the corner trying to fix a light fixture, and we, of course, as we're watching, we know that's the guide, but Janeway is a bit dismissive of her.
Okay, I didn't like this scene. I thought Janeway was being an out-and-out jerk.
I agree. She was being, there's another time too where she is being really jerky about this process. Like, I'm in a hurry here.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I don't think it fits with Janeway.
I agree. Yeah. I didn't think the scene was well written. Yeah.
No.
I think what they were trying to show was that she was impatient because of Kes's condition.
Yeah.
But it comes across as her just being disrespectful over and over.
Yes.
In this episode.
Yes.
So I don't think they portrayed it well. And really, it would have only taken 1 or 2 lines, I think, to fix it. Like, oh, I'm just really worried about, this member of my crew. She doesn't have a lot of time. She's declining. I have to get on with it. But she doesn't do it that way. Instead, she's just like, I'm in a hurry.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. She's like an impatient shopper at Costco or something. Eventually, the woman in the corner grabs Janeway's tricorder, looks at it, and puts it in her pocket, which really made me laugh.
She does it so smoothly as well. It's very funny.
It's really cute. And this makes Janeway finally realize that she is the guide. And also Ted Lasso's mom, but that's a different show. The guide says, let's get started. And we start walking through the caves, and eventually some women let Janeway's hair down, strip her, and change her into some simpler robes. They also apply some paint to her face and to her back. I found this quite aggressive because there was no discussions. It was just she walks into the room and then they just start taking her clothes off. It's like, hello, okay. I'd have already at this point, I'd have left. I'm like, no, okay. I need to understand the rules before we go in. You cannot just start taking my clothes.
I think that is also kind of funny. Didn't Janeway study for this beforehand? She's studying all these other religious traditions through the Federation. What about this planet? If they're that keen on her meeting the spirits, surely they would have happily given her a primer on, this is what we do. This is how the monks behave. These are the steps to the ritual.
Yeah. She does make a little bit of a face when they let her hair down, and I wondered if that was her saying, oh, of course, this is what they're doing. But really, it just came across as, oh my God, stop touching my hair.
Do you know how long it took me to get this hair just right?
Do you know how many seasons I've been through with this hair?
Yeah, precisely. Should have gone with a bob cut.
Oh, God, no. The guide asks if she's fully committed, and Janeway says yes. She also says their bioscanners detected the microprobe under the captain's skin, which is not a problem, though the guide says, you're fond of your little devices, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Janeway says, well, they've always served me well. Off we go into another part of the cave where we find 3 older people, including George Costanza's mom.
Yes.
And a couple of other well-known character actors. Janeway is super impatient with them, again, being quite rude.
Oh, yeah.
As she learns that they've been in this room for a long time. This is, again, another case where those of us watching these folks, we know that they're important.
Exactly.
But Janeway gives them no concern. In fact, she won't even sit down when they ask her to sit down. She just refuses. She finally tries to force the door open on the other side of the room, and when that doesn't work, she knocks really hard on it, causing it to open and revealing her guide again. And Janeway's like, I don't want to be here with these old farts, so can we please just get on with it? And the guy directs her into the next room, and you're like, you are not playing this game very well.
Yeah, you're kind of missing the point here. I thought it was interesting how these 3 characters seem to be examples of 3 different personalities.
Yes.
Like, one is very grumpy, one is really welcoming, and the middle guy is just kind of sort of chill of everything's fine.
In the new room now, which is quite dark, Janeway is wondering what the challenges are that she's going to face. The guide finds it interesting she thinks there are going to be challenges.
Yeah.
The guide tries to tell her that everything around her is meaningless and all that matters is finding her connection to the spirits. This doesn't resonate with Janeway, so the guide then says, okay, the first challenge will begin. And she has Janeway kind of stand funny, with her knees bent and one foot in front of the other. And it's like, something funny is going on here.
Yeah.
And she asks her to hold a rock up in front of her, and then she just keeps asking her, what do you see in this rock?
Right.
Up on Voyager, the doctor says everything appears normal with the captain, though there are signs of light strain, as if an endurance ritual. But there's no useful readings yet that could help Kes.
Yeah.
Back down to the cave, and Janeway is starting to tire while holding this rock, yet she still doesn't see anything except a rock. And I kept thinking, there are 4 lights. Because women kept saying, what do you see? And she's like, a rock.
Oh, that's a good callback.
Well, anyway, then she has, I think it's a vision. It's a little confusing here what happens, but she sees herself painting something and discussing how as a child she really only liked math. She didn't like the arts.
Yeah.
And the guide says the answers in math, right, they're always right or wrong. It's very absolute. And Janeway says she always found that satisfying. And then she finds herself climbing on the side of a cliff and she starts to fall. And eventually she sees the rock again and she's, back standing in the first cave. Yep. And the rock now is like lit up and really bright from the inside. And when the guide asks her what she sees, she's unable to describe it.
So was the rock actually glowing? Was this all part of Janeway's sort of vision?
There are 4 lights. Yes. I think it was all part of the vision. Or, as the guide keeps saying, it's all meaningless. Chances are she's actually just kind of hallucinating because she's getting tired from standing there for so long. Yep.
That's what I was kind of thinking, yeah.
Because remember, at the end, Picard sees the wrong number of lights because he gets so tired.
But he won't give in.
But he doesn't give in. Great episode, by the way.
Probably one of Patrick Stewart's best performances.
One of many, but that is a good one. Mm-hmm. Every time that dude gave a speech, I was like, man, he was born for that.
Oh, First Contact. Everything he did in First Contact.
Oh, he's so good in First Contact. And he's also like somehow a heartthrob. I don't know how that happened. It's a little bit like William Shatner. They made William Shatner this just heroic figure in the movies. That's why movies are so cool.
Yes.
Up on Voyager, the Doctor is seeing a bunch, there's a bunch of technobabble scene. And my iPad kept correcting all the words. So I was like, okay, I don't need to write all this down.
Yeah, they were shoveling in the technobabble.
Yes, what he says is he's seeing significant increases in the captain's something kind of neuropeptides and some kind of triphosphate levels, I don't know, suggesting that she's going through a grueling physical experience, I guess holding that rock. He's interested in this because the saturation of the neuropeptides could create a natural barrier to biogenic energy, so it could be something useful, but it's not enough info yet.
Yeah. I assume some of it is he's seeing this because Janeway believes she's going through.
Well, it would be grueling to stand and hold a rock for 3 days. Oh,
that part of it is, yeah. I haven't tried it myself.
Janeway seems to be done now with the rock challenge, telling the guide she's exhausted and taking some water.
Yeah.
The guide says your microprobe should be transmitting all kinds of interesting info back to the ship. And now she pulls out a wicker basket that sounds like it contains a very nasty snake.
Oh, yeah, there's some good hissing.
The guide describes the creature as keeper to the spiritual realm, telling the captain to put her arm in if she's ready.
Called a Nesset.
And the captain, assuming this is another test, isn't just going to be defeated. Like, she's just not going to admit she doesn't want to do it.
You're not putting Janeway off with just a hissing basket.
No, and she crams her arm into the basket. What's fun here, too, is that the guide does say, we can stop if you'd like. And Janeway's like, of course, she's not going to stop. But she could have, because as the guide said, this is all meaningless.
Yeah.
This part of it is pointless, but she just hasn't grasped that yet.
Well, right. That's one of the funny things about this episode is right at the beginning, the guide tells her, this is meaningless.
Yeah. Well, anyway, now she gets bitten by some invisible creature. It's in this effect, this is very 90s television, right? Where she sticks her hand into a basket. You never see anything.
Yeah.
But she comes out with a giant bite on her arm. She starts to panic, thinking she's dying, and she falls backwards. And then there are flashes of the visions she was having. So of her painting and falling from the cliff and dropping the rock and then collapsing. Yep. She hears Kes's voice before she opens her eyes, and she finds herself in a sort of coffin or tomb in the ground.
Yeah, it looks like a sarcophagus.
Yes, and the captain says she's dying, and the doors close over her dramatically.
Oh, yes.
On Voyager now, Chakotay is pacing, saying she's been down there for 3 days with no sleep.
Yep.
Which we don't know where the 3 days went, but was she in the sarcophagus for 3 days? Was she holding the rock for 3 days? We don't know.
Well, we kind of get an answer to that when the attendant says, I think 39 hours she was in there.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
So she's a day and a half.
So she did a day and a half holding the rock and a day and a half in the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
Well, the doctor says her vital signs are stable. They have registered an unknown toxin in her system, which I guess was from the thing that bit her.
Yep.
But the doctor thinks she's completely fine. Although I do think he's being very cavalier. But, that's pretty normal for this show.
It fits perfectly.
Yeah. The doctor does say he's getting interesting information from the sensor, but still doesn't have the answers he needs. Chakotay is ready to pull the plug, but Tuvok says he believes the captain would want to complete the ritual.
Yeah.
So Chakotay begrudgingly agrees to wait.
You can see both of their perspectives on there.
Oh, for sure. Janeway continues to have various visions, and now she's standing on a rocky beach. The guide appears behind her saying she is only there to serve as a voice, an interpreter for the ancestral spirits. Janeway says she wants to see the spirits for herself, though the guide says proof is irrelevant. And Janeway says she doesn't want to be disrespectful. Really? But she's gone through every part of the ritual that she's been asked to. Has she? The guide says everything is meaningless, which makes Janeway do kind of an eye roll.
Again.
She says, I just want to bring this to an end and make my request. So she cites the story of the king and the prince, and she says, in the same way the prince was saved, she wants Kes restored to health.
Yeah.
And the guide says, your request is inconsequential. You already have what you need to save her. And it's like, okay. The tomb opens, and Janeway learns she's been in there for 39 hours. That's a long time not to pee. That was the first thing I thought. That's a very, very long time.
Well, I hope it wasn't too well sealed because, not a lot of oxygen.
No, it just seems bad. Well, the guide helps her out, and she tells Janeway the spirits would not deceive her and gives her back her clothes, meaning if the spirit said you have what you need, then you do have it.
Which, looking at the episode as a whole, that's kind of true.
Yes.
From a certain perspective.
So back up to Voyager, and the doctor is very smug. He declares Janeway in good health, and he says the ritual was arduous, but he's learned enough to help Kes. The toxin is the key to producing the natural immunity needed.
Oh man, he just dialed it to 11 on smug.
He is so smug, and that smugness is gone in less than 30 seconds when he goes to begin the treatment regimen that he designed, and everything immediately goes off the rails, and it does not help.
Yep.
And he has to stop.
Yeah, he's completely baffled. And he has, no explanation for what's causing it.
Right. And then he says to Janeway that everything you went through was meaningless. And she has a sudden revelation on this word, and she rushes out of the room and back to the cave.
Only the third time saying it to her, it gets through.
At least 3 times. Yeah. May have been more than that. She finds the guide still trying to fix the same broken light. Does she just sit there all the time playing with that light?
Janeway could do something nice here, bring her some tools, help her.
Fix the light. Janeway says to her, everything really was meaningless, wasn't it? And the guide says, yeah, I told you 100 times.
That I actually really liked.
Yeah. Janeway says, I did everything you asked of me, but the guide says, no, I followed you. You set the challenges and I just followed you. Did that remind you of the pilot of Deep Space Nine?
Yes, 1000%. Where Dax sees the beautiful planet and garden and green fields, and Sisko sees this volcanic hellscape.
Well, that wasn't what I was referring to. What I was referring to was where he asks the prophets why they keep taking him to the room where his wife died. And they're like, we don't bring you here. You bring us here. And I thought, same thing here. She's saying, I didn't put you on these challenges. You took me on these challenges.
That's funny. We both saw different pieces of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, well, there are certainly similarities just in the topic of this episode.
Yeah.
Well, the guide asks if Janeway's come back to seek the spirits, and Janeway says she doesn't know what she's seeking. And the guide says, well, then you're ready to begin. I was like, okay, we're 34 minutes in here. What are we doing now?
Right.
Well, you know where we're going. We're going back to the waiting room with the 3 old folks.
Yep.
We knew we'd see them again. One of them kind of mocks her now for putting herself through a lot of stuff for nothing. But the more reasonable guy in the middle says a lot of people go through similar routines. He says most of the challenges we face are ones we inflict on ourselves.
Oh, when he says, you wouldn't believe what people put themselves through. I thought that was really kind of funny as well.
Like when people say to you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
I always want to punch those people. Because, no, it doesn't. I mean, maybe sometimes, but things that nearly kill you can also just nearly kill you and traumatize you.
Right.
I mean, I have lots of examples of that, but I just find that really annoying. But when he says most of the challenges we face are ones we inflict on ourselves, it's like, you know what? I don't know if that's true. I don't remember inflicting, the need to pay for healthcare on myself. I don't think I did that to myself. I just found that sentence to be irritating.
It seemed a little self-serving.
Yeah. Janeway assumes these 3 are the ancestral spirits, which makes Estelle laugh. But aren't they? I thought that they were. But anyway, they recognize that she wants a tangible answer that will show up on her scans. But one of them says, if you can explain everything, what's left to believe in?
I think if you've learned everything, that's pretty kind of cool in itself.
If you've learned everything, then you are the Q who wants to kill yourself.
Oh, that's actually kind of bad. Or you're Vija, who needs to travel to another level of reality because you've learned everything.
To consume something else, yeah. Janeway says she wasn't brought up to have faith and believe in something that she can't see. She says there's a difference between respecting the beliefs of other cultures and embracing them yourself. I would argue she hasn't really respected his culture.
Yeah, she hasn't so far in this episode, really.
One of the 3 says, fine, don't embrace anything. Go back to your ship and play with your scanners.
He's quite grumpy.
And Estelle, I mean, they don't have names, but I'm just going to call her Estelle. Estelle says, but you've already tried that and it didn't work. And they ask Janeway if she believes with enough time and information they'll find a scientific solution to Kes's illness. And Janeway says yes, of course. That's what she's always believed.
Yep.
So one of them says, even when the science fails right before your eyes, you still have full confidence in it. Now there's a leap of faith.
Yes, right. I think that was kind of what he was pointing out there.
Right.
That she has faith in science, he has faith in the spirits.
And Estelle says, unconditional trust, meaning what Janeway just exhibited, that's promising. So Janeway asks if science won't help Kes, what will? I'm willing to do whatever is necessary. And one of the three, the one who's sort of grumpy, says, kill her. Give her another jolt of the biogenic field. Janeway wants more info, of course, because she can't help herself.
Yeah.
But they say she already has the facts that the biogenic field is lethal. They tell her to let that knowledge go and take Kes back to the shrine and trust the spirits.
Yeah, the reasonable guy is much easier to understand than Mr. Grumpy.
Yeah. She says the ritual I went through was meaningless, and Kes has done nothing to prepare. How could either of us be ready? But one of the old guys says, if you believe you're ready, then you are. I like the lighting of Janeway in this scene because all you see is sort of part of her face. She's really in the dark, almost completely. But just part of her face is lit up, and there is just this intensity coming from her blue eyes. It's crazy. I really like this.
Yeah, that was a good production choice.
Well, I like it when the directing choices are trying to tell me something. And I think here they were trying to tell me that she is in unfamiliar territory, right? She is in the dark, literally. She just doesn't even know what to think. Oh,
yeah. This would, I think, fall very much outside of her worldview.
Yeah. Then to kind of make matters worse here, I think the old grumpy guy says, if you go in with any doubt or any hesitation, then you're both dead.
Yes, there's a little asterisk there. Disclaimer.
Yeah, and she says she can't stand by and watch Kes die. If there's anything that she can do, she's going to at least try. She wants to believe it's possible.
Yeah. The question I would have here is, would Janeway's confidence or desire to help Kes, would that be the same? Because I don't think there's any question that Janeway would do anything to help Kes and save her life. Mm-hmm. Would that be enough for the spirits? Or her determination, if you like?
Well, I mean, there's always this thing, like when I was a kid and, went to church and to the classes that the kids had to go to. I don't want to go into all this detail, but they would frequently tell us that what we were thinking or what was really in our heart is what mattered. So even if we carried out some good act, some act of kindness, in our head, if we thought, oh, you jerk, I don't really want to do this, then we weren't doing it. That messed with my mind so much. It put so much doubt in my mind, even about my own decisions. Did I really want to do that? Does it, you know what I mean? It just made me crazy as a kid. And so I was just kind of wondering here, are they using it in a similar fashion? It's not really true that if she has any doubt that she's going to die, or maybe that's what that guy thinks. Yeah. It's really more about if she is willing to take that leap of faith and just say, okay, there's nothing logical that says this is going to work. I have not proven anything scientifically, but they're telling me to do it. I'm just going to do it. And that's enough. It's not that she doesn't have any doubt. It's that she has arrived at the precipice and she is going to jump because she doesn't know what else to do. And that might be enough faith.
That's a good one, because there is actually a philosophical argument about if a good deed is done without the intention of that being a good deed,
you didn't do it,
then it's morally worthless because you're not doing it, if you like, for the right reasons. And if anybody actually watches the original Bedazzled movie with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, that's actually one of the messages in the movie, which is pretty funny considering it was a comedy.
It's interesting, though. You and I have talked about this before, not anything to do with the podcast, but just in our lives, where we were raised in different religions with different ways of looking at things, and where I've sat in the church that your family has gone to, and I've watched people do rituals or say things over and over, and I just find it really funny because I'm like, they don't even know what they're saying. They're just repeating it over and over, whereas in my church, that wouldn't have been enough. You had to really feel it and believe it. Otherwise, it was pointless that you do it. I kept thinking about that a lot during this episode, like how we have had this conversation in real life, in the moment of, is it real if you don't believe it? And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
This is how it is in this church. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that has been very real world conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, the captain calls Chakotay now and says to beam Kes down to the shrine. Chakotay, Neelix, and Kes are beamed down. And she's like, I only wanted Kes. But anyway, they're all there. Janeway says she's going to take Kes into the biogenic field because she believes it will save her life. Chakotay and Neelix try to talk her out of it. But eventually, she says the challenge is to go in without understanding the science.
I've got a comment here. I think Chakotay, being the non-believer, is the 1,000% wrong person.
It should have been Tuvok.
Yes, it should have been Tuvok. Chakotay has a very strong spiritual belief because Chakotay, he understands these things. We've seen it happen before. His faith in what he believes in is, I think it's fair to say, unshakable. So in this situation, if Janeway is making that appeal, he should be the one person to understand it and go, okay, I get it. Remember when he was facing death?
No, I don't disagree. We've had this before where I think they've chosen the wrong character to deliver a line. Yeah,
right.
And I think this is similar. But I would say the reason he is the one doing it is because what they've shown in the whole episode is that he's just worried about her. And he's worried that this is going to kill her because she's making bad decisions. But I agree, he's the person who should go, oh, okay, I understand. And Neelix, I get why Neelix would continue to argue. But Neelix, even he didn't really argue that much. Maybe because we're at the end. We're out of time. We got 2 minutes left. We got to get moving.
We're out of time in the episode. She's just got to do it.
Yeah. And then here's the funniest part of the whole episode is when tiny little Kate Mulgrew somehow picks up Kes. I don't think that's happening. And she walks to the steps and into the shrine where they are both zapped with the biogenic whatever it is. And Janeway is fine and Kes wakes up immediately, allowing Chakotay to breathe a sigh of relief. Up to sickbay now, and the doctor, the smugness is back, so don't worry. He says the new tricorder readings that Chakotay took revealed traces of iridium ions. He says a bunch of other technobabble, essentially saying that the captain's altered biochemistry from the trial created an effective defense. And he's convinced that the treatment he started actually protected Kes. And the captain, again, in a directing choice, the captain is sitting in this scene, which is very unusual because they're not in her captain's chair. They're in sickbay and she's just sitting in a chair. But it puts her into an uncertain position, not in command. And she's quiet until the doctor sees that she's not enthusiastic about what he's saying, as she usually is. So he asks if she disagrees with his analysis.
Yeah.
And she says, it's a perfectly sound explanation, doctor. Very scientific. And then she stands up and walks out, pausing to just sort of emphasize her uncertainty. And the episode ends. The one thing I will say about Voyager, they know how to end an episode. Amazing ending. It was really good.
Oh, do they ever? They've had some fantastic endings. Last week's ending of Remember, that's one of the absolute greats.
Yeah, that was a great ending. I mean, still, The Thaw is the best ending of all the episodes. What was the other one where Janeway, at the end, she sort of... Oh, Tuvik's. When she walks in and she, kind of swallows and then just gets on with her life. That was also good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's talk over analysis. What do you have?
I think first thing is just an observation. This kind of reminds me of Justice in TNG.
Oh, sure.
You remember where they were going to kill Wesley?
He touched the grass or something, yeah.
Enter the shrine, you die.
Yeah, it's a very common Star Trek trope, honestly. Which is why do we go down to planets? It's very dangerous down there.
Okay, first thing. So they can't violate the holy site of this race.
Right.
And scan the temple and use all their technology. But they can violate somebody else's territory with the swarm.
Yeah.
After they're warned not to.
Incongruous. The thing about the swarm, I fully believe that the swarm part of it was the B story, and you weren't supposed to think about it too much. And the doctor part was the A story. But it's the same thing, where she decided to violate their space, even though they said not to shave off however long it was off of their trip. And I mean, this is similar. Maybe because it's on a planet, it feels different, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. Next thing, I think we need to draw a few parallels here. These spirits live in these caves. They seem like they're kind of jerks because the person they pick to zap is the kindest, nicest, most caring person on the crew. And they're worshipped as sort of gods. These are power wraiths.
I guess if you examine the behavior, it is pretty jerky. I don't think that they picked Kes, but if they zap anybody who walks into their shrine, except for people who they deem worthy.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, yeah, it's hard to understand the distinction, I guess. I don't know that they're power wraiths, but it's always hard to understand what people's gods do and why they do it.
Leading on from that, it seems like this is almost a power play to demonstrate how mighty they are to Janeway, especially with the person they zap.
Yeah, but Kes is the one who walked into it. She walked into it. If it had been Neelix, it would have been Neelix.
It seems like they're trying to teach Janeway some kind of lesson as well. And I think that they're clearly abusing their powers to do this because they're acting in very sort of petty, almost human kind of ways.
Let me flip it on its head.
Okay.
If instead you looked at it like they're actually proving their existence through this ritual.
Yes, they are.
Are they not actually sealing the faith of the faithful by saying, you can't just walk in here. We didn't make you walk in. You walked in. But if you appropriately believe in our existence or seek our counsel, we'll let you in.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, it's not so bad, right? It's not about punishment. It's about we are creatures on a different plane. And if you want to get into this plane, I don't know what happens once you get in there. If you want to get into this plane, then you have to sort of release your connection with other things and believe that this is possible.
Well, it also makes faith difficult because then you're actually proving that these creatures do exist.
Well, that's exactly. That's what I mean. If you look at it like that's what they're actually doing is proving their own existence, it's not so bad. It's like, hey, we're real.
Well, it could slightly be worse because then what you have is showing a technologically advanced race can abuse a less advanced race by convincing the gullible, simple people that you're gods or sacred spirits, frightening them into compliance through the occasional murder. They're as bad. These spirits are as bad as the Ferengi.
No. Because as usual, the people, I was going to say the humans, but they're not humans. The people are applying we have to worship them because they're spirits, whatever, to them. That's not what they're doing. Whereas the Ferengi were doing that. They were saying, you have to bring us all your money. These are just aliens saying, hey, we're here. Like I said, we exist on this other plane. You have to sort of believe it. Stop trying to do your other nonsense. And if you want to talk to us, this is what you have to do. They're not saying worship us.
That's an interesting take.
It doesn't come up once in Janeway's conversation with them about you have to worship us.
That's true. That's nearly not so bad. It's the people are...
It's more like believe in our existence or believe that everything isn't science or isn't your science.
Interesting. That might be a little bit better as long as they're not abusing these people by pretending to be gods.
They don't seem to be because they're not even part of their government, right? They're staying completely out of it. And for the most part, they're minding their own business in this cave. And these morons keep walking into them. I think this might be I was reading some negative reviews of this episode, and I think this might be why I had a very different take on it. It's because I was thinking about it in all these other ways, and people were very focused on what they saw right in front of them. And I don't know. I'm looking at it completely differently. I don't think those spirits or aliens or whoever they are, I don't think they did anything.
Interesting. So it's the people on the planet who've made this whole thing up around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's this, let's call it, there's some kind of spatial fracture that leads to their dimension.
Or it's all completely phony and just those three people are, the wizard behind the curtain. That's also possible, but...
Well, that was my next point.
Yeah.
Could it just all be an organized con? They have this force field up and they have this, group of people that keep maintaining it. And they just, it is a fraud. There isn't really these aliens.
I would think that was possible if we saw some kind of benefit that they were getting from it, but we don't see that at all.
Yeah. Well, that's because they didn't manage to get through the field into the party room.
Unless they're sucking the life force of the people in order to exist. But they're like I said, they're not part of their governments. They don't have any power.
And the monks just live in the caves.
So
using their bad lights. They can't even afford good lighting.
I think once again, the people are applying all the negative stuff to it. And it's just something else completely on its own.
Okay, I see where you're coming from there, and that is a very valid take. Oh, your next point. These gods seem a little bloodthirsty with keeping people out of their place. So I'm going to say, in the Delta Quadrant, even the gods are jerks.
How many times on Deep Space Nine did we say the prophets are jerks, you guys?
Oh yeah, Atiba is still convinced of that.
Atiba said that in one episode, and we said it 1,000 times afterwards because the prophets are jerks.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's a common problem. Okay.
If you think the gods are controlling everything, then there wouldn't be bad things. So they have to be jerks if you look at them that way.
And I think my last point was actually about Chakotay. And I brought that up earlier. Like, Chakotay would probably be the most spiritually understanding of all the crew.
Yeah.
So over to you.
I had a lot of rambling. I kept writing these rambling sentences in my overanalysis because I'm trying to understand things that I'm still not sure I understand. Like, we talked about this in detail already, but I don't think you can do anything with zero doubt. It's impossible, unless you're crazy. You gotta be like a true sociopath to have zero doubts, which I know they're out there. But I don't think she was capable in that moment of having no doubt. Yeah. I think what she was capable of doing was like, okay, I said I would do whatever it took. I'm just going to trust that you're going to protect me and that this thing is real to help Kes. And that's what she did. And that came across as enough of whatever it was that they wanted.
Right. Well, I would agree. I would see Janeway as 1,000% committed to the mission, which is to save Kes. And if this is the thing I need to do to save Kes, she's going to do it.
She's going to do it.
Without question.
And she is not afraid of risk.
Yes.
This is a highly risk-tolerant person.
To the point of reckless.
When they do that risk-tolerant scale on your investments, she's like you. She's on the high end, and I'm on the low end.
One above 10. Maybe you have 12. Can I get 12 on the risk?
Yeah, she would like 12 plus a phaser, please. I was trying to figure out if science really was the answer, but they purposely didn't tell us.
Right.
Like, was it her exhaustion? And look, they detected a toxin, some kind of toxin in her system from that snake bite. Was that thing real? Maybe the snake wasn't real, but did they put some kind of toxin in her system?
Yeah.
And she was delusional at that point, and she had a hallucination that it was a snake. I mean, was that really something? I don't know, and they purposely didn't want us to know.
Oh, very much so. I think that was what the writers were completely aiming at, to put that doubt into the story.
Yeah, and I wondered, what is it that she came away with? Like, what even was her sort of hesitation at the end? Did she learn anything on the spiritual quest? I'm not sure.
We didn't see it. I think if there's a flaw in the writing, it's that we didn't really see what she learned.
Well, I don't agree, because she did take that leap of faith. But as we said, she is not risk averse, so I guess she just took the risk.
Yep.
But she had no reason to believe that would work. None.
But also, as a captain, you probably would have seen a lot of strange things.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that weird science or science beyond your understanding, or, as you said, maybe these spirits are on a different plane. It still wouldn't be science if you went across and they helped you out.
Yeah. I was thinking, too, was this all just a test? Is it very similar for everybody? They kind of go through the same thing. And then I started thinking, this is almost like a cult. But then I backed away from that because I'm like, yeah, but they're not really getting anything from it. So that's when I sort of landed at how I described it before, is I think there really are some, call them spirits or aliens or whatever. I think there really is something there. And they're just like, we're just minding our own business.
I think that's a great explanation from it. It's not really fleshed out in the writing, but maybe they were aiming at that.
Maybe.
Not giving you enough answers. We can certainly fill a lot of it in.
Yeah, and I obviously did. And I think we did that a lot, even in the Deep Space Nine episodes about religion, which are some of Deep Space Nine's best episodes.
Oh, agreed.
Some of our absolute favorites.
Yeah.
And we're not particularly religious people, but they were really meaningful to us in the way they were written and acted, I guess.
Yeah.
So if I went to Women in the Future, what's interesting about this is when you watch other shows in the 90s, movies from that time period and before, and Star Trek from that time period and before, it's really very uncommon for this entire story to play out with women.
Yeah.
And I find that really very positive for Star Trek.
Yeah.
Certainly for, as I like to call it, Women in the Future, because in this episode, nothing had anything to do with anybody's gender. None of that mattered. Yes, it was about her being the captain, because the captain was like the king, who was the father or the mother, and also in charge of the well-being of the person.
And taking responsibility for everyone.
And taking responsibility and completely making her own decisions. There's even that part at the end where Chakotay says he's just going to stop her from doing it. And the guide says, can he do that? And the captain says, yeah, he could do that. but he doesn't.
Right.
And if you look at it just that way, if you just strip sort of everything else, this is probably why I like this episode. If you strip everything else away, this is a leap forward for women and how they're portrayed in not just science fiction, not just Star Trek, but in entertainment in the 90s. This is a real differentiator.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess I probably wouldn't really have noticed that.
Even the guide was a woman. One of the, I don't know if they were the prophets or the aliens or the spirits or whatever. One of them was a woman.
Parites.
Yeah, the Parites. Whatever they were. Just something to think about.
Parites evil sees no gender.
And then in Janeway's leadership corner, I mean, we've already talked about it a fair amount. You know, she takes so many risks. Yeah. She is wild. She's so Kirk-like.
Oh,
she's
completely.
So different from Picard. While Picard would make sacrifices for his crew, and absolutely did. The things he did for Worf, for example, right? There are things he would do, but the leaps of faith were not his strong suit.
No, that was Sisko.
That was more Sisko, yeah. So it's interesting to watch the different leadership styles, I guess, in Trek.
Well, this is where Janeway is the absolute throwback to Kirk.
She totally is. I frequently, though, say we don't talk about it enough. We don't ask enough questions. I do think we should have had maybe more of a conversation about what she was getting into, but she didn't do that. She just made a decision, and they all just went, okay, I guess she's going in. And it might have been good to just have a chat about it. I don't know.
Yes.
But that's not the Jane way.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Okay. This was a very difficult one for me. I would have gone neutral, but it's just crossing that line. I'm saying I'm giving it a thumbs up, but not a very big one, because I think it missed the real aim of the story. I think was to convince Janeway that maybe there is a spiritual side to the universe. I didn't think they did that very well. And I think there was some odd things like Janeway just being kind of a jerk didn't fit with who she was.
Yeah.
I think you could have made more from this story. So a thumbs up, but only just, and mostly because I enjoyed discussing this episode with you.
Yeah, there have been cases before where we've talked ourselves into liking episodes because it's like we didn't recognize the depths until we started discussing it.
Yeah.
I didn't think the parts where she was being disrespectful in the caves made sense.
Yeah.
I think they needed a line or two to explain that she was actually just in a hurry because of Kes. But they did that on purpose because they wanted us to understand that she was just there to get the scientific answer.
Right.
And I get what you're saying, that maybe we didn't do enough or we didn't show enough of what she was learning. But if we had shown too much, I feel like we would have complained about that. Like if she had suddenly become, oh yeah, these things are real, I don't think we would have bought that. Instead, what they did is at the very end, she was like, okay, maybe there are just things I can't see or explain, and I'm just going to have to learn to accept that. And so she was almost just like accepting that little tiny kernel of a change instead of some massive, all of a sudden now I'm believing in the prophets.
But I think if you were a Starfleet captain, you would see so much of that in your career and in your life of how do you explain that? I literally can't.
I also think, I get what you're saying, but I also think that, and I could be totally wrong, but this feels like the writers trying to explore death and God.
Oh.
And I liked how they did it. I don't always like how people do that, but we've all got our own journey on these things. But I did feel like it was a little bit of that in there.
Oh, interesting.
And we've talked a few times on this show, not in the podcast, but I mean, the characters in the shows have talked about believing in religious type things, right? It's come up a few times with different aliens that we've run into. And I just thought it was good that what they were trying to explore was something really big, but they didn't want Janeway to go too far because we wouldn't have bought it.
Oh.
So I looked at this episode in similar fashion to how I looked at all the Deep Space Nine religious episodes. Not all of which are great, but they're definitely in our top 5, right? Some of those episodes were just some of the absolute best ones. And I kind of looked at this as similar, as we're trying to kind of explore something. And it's easier to explore religion when it's not an Earth-based religion. Because anytime people try to put religion into current shows, it's difficult because of, the world, because the world sucks.
You can always find somebody to complain about something.
Completely. This way, these are made up people, made up spirits.
Made up monks.
It's all made up. It's easier for somebody else to criticize it because nobody can take it personally because none of those people are real. And that really works for me.
Yeah.
So on top of what I said about women in the future, I think Kate Mulgrew is really good in this episode. I agree there are weak parts, but I think the low rating on IMDb is bogus. I think this episode is great, and I really liked it. I give it a thumbs up.
Oh, awesome. It does raise an interesting question of anybody who maybe doesn't believe in the spirits living in the planet in this time frame has actually seen a genuine miracle happen in real time.
Well, just like anything, though, there's people everywhere who aren't paying attention to this. Don't care about it, don't believe in it, have their own religion, have the Church of Akorum. They have their own thing going on somewhere else on the planet, you know.
Akorum is my emissary.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
A doubting Thomas, you would say?
Okay, sure.
Hey, you made a Janeway joke earlier.
I know, I like the Janeway. I think that's pretty good. All right. That wraps up Season 3, Episode 7. Come back next week for Episode 8. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, Blue Sky, at ReBingeIT, and you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.